what's going.
Okay. Hi students, this is Mrs. Fulfer and I'm here to read for you on our special Halloween story. And I'm going to read to you today a book that actually belongs to my husband and my children. And it's called The Wolves Are in the Walls. It's by Neil Gaiman. And I don't know if any of you are like scary story fans, but Neil Gaiman is also the author who wrote the book Coraline that was made into a movie. And so I have a funny story about this book. When my husband first wanted to read it to my kids, I looked at the pictures and I said, oh my gosh, you can't read this book to them. It's too scary. It looks scary. But it turns out that even though the pictures are a little bit scary, it's actually a great story for kids. So here we go. The wolves are in the walls. Okay, let's do this. Lucy walked around the house. Inside the house, everything was quiet. Her mother was putting homemade jam into pots. Her father was out at his job playing the tuba, and her brother was in the living room playing video games. Lucy heard noises. The noises were coming from inside the walls. They were hustling noises and bustling noises. They were crinkling noises and crackling noises. They were sneaking, creeping, crumpling noises. Lucy knew what kinds of things make noises like that in the walls of big old houses, and she went and told her mother. There are wolves in the walls, Lucy said to her mother. I can hear them. No, said her mother, there are no wolves in the walls. You must be hearing mice. Wolves, said Lucy. I'm sure it's not wolves, said her mother, for you know what they say. If the wolves come out of the walls, it's all over. What's all over? Asked Lucy. It, said her mother. Everybody knows. Lucy picked up her pig puppet doll, which she'd had since she was a very little baby. I don't think it sounds like mice, she said to her pig puppet. In the middle of the night, when everything was still, she heard clawing and gnawing, nibbling and squabbling. She could hear the wolves in the walls, plotting their wolfish plots and hatching their wolfish schemes. In the day, Lucy felt eyes upon her, watching her from the cracks and from the holes in the walls. They peeped through with the eyes of the paintings, and she went to talk with her father. There are wolves in the walls, she told him. I don't think there are, Puppet, he told her. You have an overactive imagination. Perhaps the noises you are hearing are coming from rats. Sometimes you get rats in big old houses like this. It's wolves, said Lucy. I can feel them in my tummy, and Pig Puppet thinks it's wolves as well. Well, you can tell your puppet, began her father, and then he said, why am I talking to tell the puppet anything? She's just a puppet. Lucy patted her pig puppet head so she wouldn't feel offended. Anyways, you know what they say about wolves, she said to her father. If the wolves come out of the walls, it's all over. Who says that? Everybody says that. And he went back to practicing his tuba. Ooh, you can see the wolf eye in the hole in the wall. She was drawing a picture when she heard noises again, a scrambling, rumbling, rustling in the walls. There are wolves in the walls, she told her brother. Bats, he said. You think it's bats? No, he said, I think you are. And he laughed for a long time at his own joke, although it had not been a particularly good one. I'm not bats, said Lucy. I'm telling you, there are wolves in the wall. Firstly, there are no wolves in this part of the world, he told her. And secondly, wolves don't live in walls, only mice and rats and bats and things like that. And thirdly, if the wolves come out of the walls, it's all over. Who says that? Asked Lucy. Mr. Wilson at my school, said her brother. He teaches us about wolves and things. And how does he know? Asked Lucy. Everybody knows, said her brother, and he went back to doing his homework. The next day, the noises were louder. We have to do something about those mice, said her mother. Pesky rats, said her father. It's bats, I know it, said her brother. But Lucy did not think it was mice or rats or bats. She shook her head at their sad display of ignorance. Then she cleaned her teeth and she kissed her mother and father and she took herself off to bed. The old house made no noises that night. I don't like it, Lucy told her pig puppet. It's too quiet. But soon enough, she closed her eyes and she was fast asleep. In the middle of the night, there was a howling and a yowling, a bumping and a thumping, and the wolves came out of the walls. This is this picture I thought was too scary for my kids. Oh no, shouted Lucy's mother. The wolves are coming out of the walls, shouted Lucy's father, picking her up and running down the stairs with Lucy and his best tuba. It's all over, shouted her brother. The family went out the back door and into the garden. They huddled at the bottom of the garden that night. The lights were on in every room of their house. Back in the house, they knew the wolves were watching their television and eating the food from the family's pantry and dancing wolfish dances up the stairs and down again. We should go live in the Arctic Circle, said Lucy's father. We should go live in the Sahara Desert, said her mother. I think we should go live in outer space, said her brother. I don't want to live anywhere but my home, said Lucy. It was chilly at the bottom of the garden, and Lucy missed her pig puppet. She'll be all alone in that house with the wolves, she thought. They could do dreadful things to her. So Lucy crept back up the garden, quieter than any mouse. Make sure you can see the picture. She slipped up the back steps and through the back door and into the house. Lucy was standing there in the little hall at the back of the house when she heard some wolves coming down the stairs. They had been eating jam and toast from her in front of the television, and they were coming back for more. Where could she go? What could she do? Quick as the flick of the wing of a bat, Lucy slipped into the wall. She crept through the house on the inside and through the downstairs and up the middle and into the wall of her bedroom. There was a huge wolf, fat as anything, asleep on her bed. He was wearing her socks, 2 on his back paws and 1 on his ear, and he was snoring very loudly. Lucy pushed open the picture that hung over her bed and climbed down. Carefully, quietly, she picked up the pig puppet from the floor and gave him a hug. Quiet as a shadow, Lucy climbed up the old dollhouse, and from there to the top of the chest of drawers, and from there to the mantelpiece, and behind the picture and back into the walls. I was worried sick about you, she told Pig Puppet, and she squeezed her very tightly. Through the walls crept Lucy and back into the garden to her family. Where have you been? They asked her. I had to go and get my pig puppet, she said. I told you I would buy you a new one, said her mother. But I had to go back and get my pig puppet, said Lucy, and she went to sleep cuddling her pig. The next morning, Lucy's mother went to work and Lucy's brother went to school. And Lucy and her father sat down at the bottom of the garden and he practiced his tuba and read travel brochures. We could go live on a desert island, her father told them that evening over a dinner of hamburgers and French fries. We could live in a grass hut with grass walls on an island in the middle of the sea with nothing but goats and nothing but fishes. We could live in a hot air balloon, said her mother. We could live in a tree house at the top of a very tall tree, said her brother. Or we could go back and live in our house, said Lucy. What? Said her father. What? Said her mother. What? Said her brother. Well, said Lucy, there's a lot of space in the walls of the house, and at least it isn't cold in there. But what about the wolves? They are in the house, said Lucy, not in the walls. Lucy's mother and father and brother grumbled and frowned. Still, none of them wanted to spend the night sleeping at the bottom of the garden. They tried sleeping in the shed, but it smelled too much like lawnmowers and the fertilizer. So they crept back up the steps, through the back door, into the back hall, and into the walls. We must be very quiet, said Lucy. But the wolves were making such a noise that no one would have heard them anyways. The family crept through the walls of the house, peeking through the eye holes of the paintings and through the cracks of things. The wolves were watching television and eating popcorn. They had turned the television up as loud as it would go, and they had spilled popcorn all over the floor, and it stuck to the unfinished slices of toast and jam. They were dashing up the stairs. They were sliding down the banisters, and the wolves had put on the family's nicest clothes, and they had made big holes in the back of them for their tails. In the middle of the night, something woke them up. The wolves were having a party. They were singing, and they were dancing, and they were telling jokes, and one of the wolves was playing on her brother's video games, and he was beating all the high scores. Two of the youngest wolves got into the pots of jam and were eating it straight out of the pots and smearing the jam on the walls. The biggest, fattest wolf of all was playing an old wolf melody on Lucy's father's second-best tuba. My jam! My walls! Said Lucy's mother. My video games! Said Lucy's brother. My second-best tuba! Said Lucy's father. Right, I've had enough, said Lucy. There wasn't much space in between the walls, just an old broken chair, and Lucy picked up a chair leg. You know, I've had just about enough of this, as much as I can take of these wolves too. Each of her family members picked up a broken chair leg. Ready, said her mother. Ready, said her father. And... "Ah!" yelled the wolves. "The people have come out of the walls! And when the people come out of the walls," shouted the biggest, fattest wolf, flinging aside the tuba, "it's all over." And round they ran, gathering their most treasured possessions. "Flee," they shouted, "flee, flee, flee. For once the people come out of the walls, it's all over." Down the stairs were the wolves, scurrying and hurrying and tumbling over each other in a hurry to get out of the house and out of the way. "Whose idea was this anyways?" moaned one of the wolves. And the wolves ran and ran and ran, and they didn't stop running until they got somewhere where there would never be any people in the walls who would come out in the middle of the night, whooping and singing and brandishing chair legs. And whether they went to the Arctic or the desert or outer space or somewhere else entirely, no one knows. But from that day on, these wolves were never seen again. It took the family several days for cleaning up to make the house look anything like it was before the wolves came out of the walls. But eventually everything was back to the way it had been before, except for Lucy's father's second-best tuba, which had sustained severe jam damage. Lucy's father sold his second-best tuba and brought a sousaphone instead, which he had always wanted, and everything went back to normal. Until Lucy noticed something funny. She heard rustlings and scratchings and squeezings and creakings in the old house, and then one night she heard a noise that sounded exactly like an elephant trying not to sneeze. She went and got her pig puppet. "Do you think I should tell the rest of them," she said, "that we have elephants living in the walls of our house?" "Oh, I'm sure they'll find out soon enough," said the pig puppet to Lucy. And they did. Now here's a big elephant track. All right. Happy Halloween, everyone. I hope you had a great day, and hopefully we will see you soon. Bye.